Sejam todos bem-vindos. Eventos ligados à arte, à cultura e à tecnologia e que integra o programa Aveiro 2027, cidade candidata à capital europeia da cultura. Durante 7 dias, a Aveiro Tech Week irá reforçar o posicionamento do município de Aveiro, colocando-o como o epicentro da rota cultural e tecnológica. Vamos então dar início à sessão e convido o Sr. Presidente da Câmara de Aveiro, José Ribal Esteves, a dirigir-se ao palco. Convidamos também os restantes oradores a subirem ao palco: Artur Silva, vice-reitor da Universidade de Aveiro; Paulo Firmeza, diretor de Estratégia de Inovação e Digital da Altice Labs; José Carlos Pedro, presidente do Instituto de Telecomunicações; Pierre Lucena, presidente da Porto Digital Brasil, e Fernando Alfaiate, presidente da missão Recuperar Portugal, Plano de Resiliência e Recuperação. Tem agora a palavra o Presidente da Câmara Municipal de Aveiro, José Ribal Esteves.
Muito bom dia a todas e a todos. Muito gosto em ter-vos por cá nesta nossa sessão, depois da volta que demos pela cidade a ver projetos. Nesta sessão de abertura simples, mas muito importante para nós, desta edição 2022 do Aveiro Tech Week. Eu quero, de uma forma global, abraçar todos, agradecer a presença de todos nesta semana, para nós muito importante, nesta sessão que marca esse arranque, mas nem a sessão, nem a semana são importantes de per si. A importância é aquilo que este ecossistema que temos em Aveiro, liderado, puxado pelo nosso motor principal, que são as nossas empresas privadas, com motores auxiliares importantíssimos, como a nossa Universidade de Aveiro, o Instituto de Telecomunicações e, humildemente, também a Câmara Municipal de Aveiro. Portanto, é esta parceria que nos permite fazer esta semana, mas a semana faz sentido porque há um trabalho de todo o ano, diário, de todo este conjunto de parceiros, para que nós possamos depois ter esta montra de eventos, ter esta montra para mostrar aos outros aquilo que fazemos com um cuidado de comunicação e uma intensidade de atenção mais forte neste exercício que quisemos chamar assim Aveiro Tech Week. O Aveiro Tech Week tem 3 personalidades principais: os Tech Days, que congregam um conjunto de apresentações, de workshops, de múltiplas ações para apresentar projetos em estádio inicial, em várias fases de desenvolvimento, nesta área da aplicação das tecnologias, com um cuidado muito especial,
with a very special care to bring them to the life of the city, to the life of citizens. Criatech also. This other personality using technologies for cultural production. As the name states, it's the cultural creativity using technology as the main device of making it a reality, with the main key, which is the talent of human beings, and Prisma Art Light Tech. It's a festival of light that has been very important for 2 of the years of the evening. It's Friday and Saturday, using LED technology, paying attention in terms of the environment to this exercise of art that it's always very bold, very daring, very innovative. All of this in the 4 corners of the city, following the logic that the city is the stage of the operation, where we do things and where we meet. In the 22 edition, we have a 4th item. We are at the end stage of the tenders to Capital of Culture. We tendered with 11 other European cities Portuguese cities, also European, of course, and we are we have Braga, we have Évora, we have Ponta Delgada. In this way, to become the European capital of culture in 2027, so alongside a city from Latvia. So we are working very hard with that sentence that I really love, which is nothing starts in Aveiro because we are the European capital of culture in 2027, and nothing will end if we are not able to do it. But there will be an important step taken, a step of giants in this growth of what we are as a cultural episode in this opportunity of a great marketing operation, European scale, and of course the world. So there are many events that I always like to highlight. The annual meeting of the European Network Culture Next, which is a network of cities that have been capital of culture before, and others who are tendered to be and are candidates. So in this sharing of experience with almost 200 people of 22 countries throughout Europe, who will also be here working with us this week in terms of making an international view of our culture, sharing it with others, and always bringing us to ourselves with our sharing and integration in our geographic and cultural area of other cultures. It's the time that the partners of every day, those who are closer to us, are the ones that we forget the most, are the ones that belong to the life of every day. It's very important for us to be alive. But a very special word of appreciation for the University of Aveiro, hereby represented, because he's the engine of so many projects that we have ongoing. Our pro-rector, Artur Silva. This university, we still say it's young, although it's a bit, well, it's a stretch. It's a stretch to say that it's young because it's almost becoming 50, almost becoming 50. But compared with others, it's not that old, I know. But it's still quite young, it's very young of those who have high performance and less years of age. The Institute of Telecommunications, this national institute that is so important, that like everything in Portugal is born in Lisbon, and everything that is smart and paying attention to the territory follows the dynamics and with the quality to our Institute of Communications headquartered in Aveiro. It is the most successful initiative, so it's a great way to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Telecommunications Institute in 2022. So congratulations and thank you. It's for your availability, for your participation, because IT is always there. Some things were not that easy for our citizens, fiber optics, for example, but it's one of the items of our Aveiro Living Lab for research, for private companies, and Altis Labs, of course, a very, very important partner, a company that has so much to sell and so much to share with their ability to generate a university starting from their center of study on telecom, knowing how to be a public company and being now a private company that's multinational, that knew how to address its planetary dimension and to set in Aveiro its center of operations in terms of research and development. So it is an honor. It's an honor. You are a gem. You are a gem. So thank you so much for everything you do, for all your partnerships. We have a lot of them with Altis. As I always say, the best part of Altis is Altis Labs, the one that belongs to Aveiro. We have honored guests, very special honored guests. We chose two. We invited two people, and let me thank them for accepting our invite. Pierre. He is the president of Porto Digital. Porto Digital because it's the port area of Recife in Brazil. It was the name that they chose. It sounds well here. It sounds good in Portugal because we are also a city with a port also, and we have been doing a very, very important regeneration of the Porto de Recife, the port of Recife in Brazil. So we are here also to do the same in our city, which is the former fish market, and we are working hard to bring new life using this example, which is brilliant, of the work of Porto Digital, which is not just technology, of the companies who are there also. It's also of inducting a new life to part of the city that got lost because other activities have disappeared or changed places. So to Pierre and to the entire team of Porto Digital, thank you for being here, for choosing Aveiro. They were talking with 5 Portuguese cities to see where Porto Digital would come in Portugal, and they decided to come to Aveiro. We are now welcoming them to go deeper into this study of work of this ecosystem, and we will be with them in Recife in November, and at the end of this, well, let's call it an engagement, we will start the physical installation of Porto Digital in Aveiro. Pierre, thank you. Our other guest is an honored guest. We brought him in so that he keeps an important slice of the 17 billion euros of the RRP for Aveiro. So I would like him to understand or to help us understand the opportunities that we have, because it's amazing for Portugal and Europe to relaunch after the drama, the economic and social drama caused by the pandemic of COVID-19. We were kidding around because the name of the mission that Fernando Alfaiate leads is to recover Portugal. Now it's a bit, we don't know what leads us to recover Portugal. Is it the reason of the RRP on EU, which was the pandemic, or this name or this new war stupidly caused by Russia on the Ukraine, or one other war that is becoming harder and harder, which is a trade war between the United States and China? Well, it's not important. The important is that we do have the RRP, so thank you, Fernando Alfaiate, for having accepted our invite and helping us to understand where we stand and what will we do with this important device, and also how can we profit from it in our roads. For example, Aveiro Agde, it's one of the main projects funded by the RRP, amongst so many other things. So this is a week of giving an account of what we do. So we are doing a lot of things in the Aveiro Steam City, in the different operations headquartered in this amazing and unique place of the city, which is our living science building, where we have all our schools. It's the dearest week of 4th graders, where they go to the School of Living Science, where we develop teamwork between the city and the university, with their amazing team, led by Pedro Pomo from our Living Science building. So also this logic of technology connected to the environment, to power, to mobility, these are 3 main areas. We are developing a lot of projects with other entities, partners that manage transportation such as Transdev, Solid Urban Waste, Veolia, a lot of people working in this process because they're here working with us every day. All of this with a very special word of appreciation. And let me finish to our EU. We have the honor to be Portuguese, of having this old country in the proper sense. Not always good, but if you do the math, it's the best home country in the world. So we try to take care of it, and we are aware that the Portuguese homeland is very important because it belongs to the world, and we are able to work much better. And there's still a long way to go in terms of the Lusophone world, and Brazil is a very, very important agent alongside all Africa and east area of the globe. So let's take advantage of this presence of the Lusophone countries in a platform that's political and economic of the EU, and that we can then foster the values of the Western world, of Portugal, the values that the EU is fighting for. That's why it was born. That's why we wanted to become stronger. Thank you for everything you do, supporting social and economic development, maintenance of peace, supporting this set of countries that are a very important player worldwide. Always with this view that we develop in Aveiro of having an investment generating employment, wealth, and we try to help the politicians who want to be an alternative to governing, that we cannot be debating of those who discount the most or a bit more subsidy, or those who are talking about small percentages. That's not the way to do it. It's important to talk about where to invest with public resources, private resources, innovation, new markets, qualified jobs. This is the way to go. And not the logic that we are putting this that it's the opposition to see who pays most, who is getting more or less percentage. That is the wrong way. We want to follow a different way, the way of those who invest, of those who grow. And it is by the work of each person of making wealth from wealth that we can give a contribution to be a more competent country in an Europe that's becoming stronger, in a world where we need to choose our allies, working with them on subjects of economic development, and to keep an eye on those who, not being our allies, belong to the same world, and we want to have connections of peace, but that we cannot go so deep that they can put at stake our existence, namely, when two things are at stake, two very important things: power, energy, and food. Germany and northern countries, I hope that they learn once and for all that the geostrategic policy must have an absolutely capital alliance with the alliances of economic development, of what is the freedom of being free, the ability to develop without risking all of a sudden having a model that is put at stake because of a crazy guy that, with no civilized goal, is putting at stake the safety and peace of the world, our freedom, and what we want to life, which is to be happy. To be happy. That mother and father brought to us with the blessing of God for those who believe in it. So that's why we are here. Let's do more. Let's do better for Aveiro, for Portugal, for Europe, for the world. Thank you. Let's bring on stage the pro-rector of the University of Aveiro, Artur Silva. Good afternoon. Although we didn't have lunch, but it's already afternoon. Pleasure to be here. It's becoming a habit for all of us to meet during this week to celebrate this event. And the brochure says that Aveiro becomes the epicenter of culture and technology. But I think we do it throughout the year. Let me risk saying that Aveiro and all the intervenients, I do consider that we are already the center of technology, moving forward to culture, to bring it all together. It's wonderful to see the technology that culminated with a vehicle where we took just a small trip, small going around, and seeing the pressure that we have been developing in the universities, the development of research that then culminates in something that is and will be applied in our everyday lives, and that we hope that in the near future we can use it not just in a small part, but just applied to our life. Well, all these things are a way, and I think that you use similar words to these ones, dear Mayor. Partnerships. Partnerships. So on stage, we have partners that, have been partners for many years. And we can do much better when we work together. So let me greet you all, our partners and our guests. And let me tell you that when we work in partnerships alone, there's no synergy. When we work together, that's when synergies appear and very good things come from it. And the mayor spoke about them already. But if we're talking about Tech Week, we're talking about Tech Labs. And let's start with the Living Science Factory. Kids from kindergarten to secondary education, but then a lot more other things in common. Technology and the university and the IT with the city provide the city with. And this is the way that the university has been growing in terms of research and innovation. In our annual budget, that will increase 50%, and what contributes for this reality is research and innovation. We have our representative of the RRP. Let me tell you that the tenders that we have decided to move forward with, we want Aveiro to be in the same stage as Braga and Lisbon. That's why the university will be in 21 agendas, 93 projects with an incentive of 50 million euros. It is a movement in order to bring to the region and to improve everything that we have around us. Also, our innovation in terms of training. This morning, when we started to discuss with each other to see how technology works and these challenges of the RRP, bringing us challenges in terms of human resources, because in some areas it's hard for us to get those resources. We need to go look for them to be efficient. New courses, for example, last year we had aerospace engineering. So that's the goal, creating new challenges, new training. I can also tell you that, I think I mentioned this last year, we are part of the European network to create a European university. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's SIU. It's one of the innovative projects. It was a pilot project that is finishing its first 3 years, and we tendered for 6 more, and we have already been granted. It's a network of 12 European university is creating a different university. It means that it will not compete with the 12. They will provide something different. Teaching, research, innovation can be based on challenges since day one. The region also, the center region, and that's a different way of teaching based on challenges for lifelong training and beyond. But this will be something that is quite challenging for the university and the region. Of course, that when we talk about training, and this is something that the mayor has been talking about for a few years, so let me take advantage of this stage to tell you that the University of Aveiro will tender or it will submit to a course which is an aspiration of the region because we need to have better health care for the region, and that health care started 2 years ago with the creation of the Clinical Academic Center. No physical building yet. That's why, alongside the city and the hospital, we want to create a building. It's working already without a building, involving hospitals, the Hospital of Aveiro, Feira, and Gaia, and all the health units from the south of Douro River to the north of the Mondego River, working in the development of more clinical research, making it that in October we will submit to the Agency of Certification of Courses, creating an integrated master's in medicine. Of course, that if there is funding, if the course is approved, soon we will have this course so that the region and university can provide better health care for this region. So this combination between us and the partner, this is where we get things and products, courses, an interaction with society that might improve our region. So I think that what we should say is that together we're better and we can do much more. Thank you. Let's now call to the stage Paulo Firmeza, Innovation and Digital Strategy Director at Altis Labs. Dear Mayor, dear Prorector, dear participants of this opening session, it's an honor for Altis Labs to be here once again in Aveiro Tech Week, not just as the main sponsor, glad to be the main partner, but as partners of the municipality, the regions. So we are here for you as a partner. I don't have a lot of slides, but moving forward, and the mayor has spoke about Altis Labs a lot, it's an honor for us being the headquarters of innovation of the Altis Group. The group has selected as the headquarters for innovation and tech development to the world. Many years of history, of course, but now we represent a very important role in this ecosystem of the group. Well, standing in Aveiro, we are a very strong agent of employment. We have more than 700 people with us, 850 soon. So we have an accrued responsibility to the region from that point of view. So we have been here innovating for more than 50 years. A set of landmarks of technology were born into the world. For example, in the 80s, Portugal was the first country in Europe with a network that was fully digitalized. In the 90s, we had the first fiber optics network, and now communications are made of fiber optics. But in the 90s, we built a fiber for the first time here in Aveiro, maybe one of the first in the world. In the 90s, it is commonly acknowledged that we have invented the prepaid phone. In the 2000s, with technology developed in Aveiro, Portugal became the fourth country in the world to have broadband everywhere in all villages. And we've launched Mel, which is our brand, but it was quite innovative at that time as a television service. This is just some of the things that we did in Aveiro. As I said, but now we are proud of having 300 million people that communicate every day in different countries with technology developed by Altis Labs. Just to give you some idea, our routers are now in geographies such as United States, France, Alaska, Fiji Islands. Our platform of mobile network control is in geographies coming from Brazil to East Timor. Recently in Brazil, the systems that control the operation of the greatest fiber optics networks in Brazil belong to us. So we are very proud of being with this geographic penetration that it's to such an extent. And again, we don't work exclusively from Aveiro, but Aveiro is our heart. We don't do it alone, of course. We have an innovation model that is open with the partners of the industry, universities in Aveiro. The University of Aveiro is an amazing partner alongside the Telecom Institute. We also have labs funded by Altis Labs, Aveiro, Coimbra, Trás-os-Montes, but we do have protocols with almost all universities, and we try to foster an ecosystem of entrepreneurship with our Enter program, which is a startup scouting program that we are very proud of. Oddly enough, the EU said that Altis Labs is the company with more successes, 20 innovations in the country. We are the greatest, so we are the Portuguese entity with more innovative technologies, so we are number one. Talking about the innovation ecosystem, we are very proud of having the greatest award of innovation in Portugal. This year it's on its sixth edition. It will be the greatest edition ever. We had 125 startups, academic projects, projects of social inclusion associated to our Altis Foundation competing to this award. We will now distribute 95,000 euros in awards for startups, projects of the academia, and projects for inclusion. When we work in innovation, we need to define a radar on what we are interested in. And this is where we work with partners, obviously in European partnership with European funds, with national funds, with universities, and also with self-funding programs. So in those fields, from optic networks, smart cities, 5G network, 6G, augmented reality, smart living, big data, they have a presence in all these realms with cooperative projects, ID, that we launch or participate in consortia. So specifically in Aveiro, as a result of this labor, within STEAM City, we have developed the urban platform of Aveiro with the help of the municipality. Without it, we could not have done it. So here's an example of a partnership that works. It was the first city to have a 5G network working before the 5G was commercial. So we had the first one in Aveiro. So we are now with a joint tender with the Institute of Telecom, with Brisa, making it again an area so that we can have a most advanced environment of communication so that partners can come to experiment in Aveiro what we have in terms of innovation in the realm of telecommunications. So we have a project, also City Catalyst, that has evolved to a set of concepts that we have developed in the field of big data, and also in this edition of Tech Week, it is clear to see that it involves slicing of the 5G network to give answer to urban situations. For example, I might have an infotainment system in the city with the greatest quality of service, but in face of an emergency, the quality of service can go towards that emergency service. So, what we are exploring, it's the new one that has to do with systems that cooperative. We are working once again with partners, and we will have 3 urban scenarios. They'll see through, which is this that we can see here. We can see that it goes beyond an obstacle and something that is in front of me. Emergency vehicles coming about protecting pedestrians. So this is just a sample of what we do in Aveiro. We want to do much more, and dear Mayor, thank you for the partnership again. We are here for you, and I wish you all a great, great tech week. Thank you. Let's now hear José Carlos Pedro. He is the president of the Telecom Institute. Good morning. Pleasure to be here representing the Telecom Institute, participating in this opening session of the Aveiro Tech Week, specifically the Aveiro Tech Days. Dear Mayor of Aveiro, dear Paulo Firmeza, Artur Silva, dear Fernando Alfaiate, dear President of Porto Digital, Pierre Lucena, I would like to also mention Felipe Machado, with whom we have been working, and a word of appreciation for my colleague Susana Sargento, that has contributed a lot for these Tech Days. Let me thank you for inviting me to participate in this opening session of one more Aveiro Tech Week that I have accepted. The quality or inequality, and the president of the Telecom Institute, it's important to say that we worked with the city for Tech Days in all editions. In fact, our cooperation between the city of Aveiro and the Telecom Institute has been going on for a while, showing that we can create and keep partnerships regardless of public funding that can motivate, as unfortunately is something that appears in our country. Proof of this are the different activities that we have been keeping, as is the case of the recent project Aveiro Tech STEAM City, that we are very, very proud of, and that allowed us to create a living lab within the city, the Aveiro Living Labs. And also the Aveiro Tech Days, where we are for one more edition. The Aveiro STEAM City project allowed to do a lot of experiences within the scope of the teaching of technology and smart mobility, as we were able to see with our self-driving bus. So we have created a living lab in the city that we still keep in operation, and for which we are developing a model of providing it to other institutions of research or foreign or national research institutions. Let me strengthen this. An institute that creates a lab within the city that then intends to provide it to other entities who wish to take advantage of that infrastructure and therefore contribute to give relevance to the city, allowing the development of research in Portugal. On its hand, Aveiro Tech Days came about in 2015 as an idea of IoT and of the University of Aveiro and the city, with the goal of creating an event where we could show the best of the region of Aveiro in technologies of information, electronics, the strengthening, promoting and publicizing the abilities of the region in this area. Since the 50s, the city has been stating itself in the history of telecom, and this adventure started by creating the centers of studies on the subject of the CTT by Engenheiro José Ferreira Pinto Basto, and that later in the 70s will become Center of Telecom, the famous set. It was created around it an ecosystem that took a qualitative leap when in 1973 and afterwards came into functions in 74 the University of Aveiro. In fact, one of the initial goals of this young university was to form technicians for this field and specifically for the studies of telecom, reason for which that was referred to as provisional facilities. Well, even if at that time Portuguese universities kept the traditional teaching of engineering that was quite focused on the production and distribution of electric energy, the University of Aveiro was brave enough to bet strongly on training in exclusive in electronics and telecom, creating a course that was absolutely new and innovative at that time. That risk came to fruition, and the University of Aveiro became innovative and one of the best in the country. The availability of highly qualified workers brought more investment to Aveiro, thus strengthening the status that had been acknowledged of the Portuguese capital of telecom that we are very proud of and that we would love to keep. In 1992, we are now celebrating the 30th anniversary. The University of Aveiro became part of a consortia where there was the IST, also the University of Coimbra, and has created the Telecom Institute. It came to aggregate research made in the university in telco, allowing for taking a great leap in terms of quantity and quality and bringing it closer to the manufacturing fabric that was at that time in the Portuguese academic scenario quite innovative. Young researchers, highly motivated in a regional environment that is very friendly to innovation, made of it the most dynamic one that in time became its headquarters. Today, the Telco Institute in IT Aveiro has an undeniable role in the scientific panorama and the development of communications worldwide. As such, it is an institution that is very important in creating and disseminating knowledge, transferring technology for companies, supporting society and public policies, as well as the training in the field of IT, communication, and electronics. Let me tell you that this is from the mission of the IT, and it's much more than words. These are specific actions. So, the Institute is very proud to be part of this event in promoting technology and above all, it's coming closer to society. We hope that we can motivate more youngsters for these systems therefore answering to the greatest challenge that we face today, the inability of the world that is developed in having the stuff that it's necessary for its manufacturing or productive context. Let me tell you also, this morning I was debating with the pro-rector and the mayor and the head of the RP, and we all agreed upon the following. It's very difficult to fulfill the projects that we have at hand because we don't have qualified resources. So we have been losing competitivity in terms of production. Europe and North America don't even have employees for conception and design, bringing more and more migrants in terms of technical employees and students, postgraduate students. This being a forum that has the academia, the industry, and members of the representatives of the city, let me take this opportunity to strengthen the importance of training. In 73, Aveiro being the city of telco. Now it's once again limited by its ability of training youngsters in technology and communication. Alas, this is the only way to have the qualified technicians that they will need in 10 or 20 years, and that will define the attraction of new investors and the creation of new companies. So, this has to happen today in the teaching of quality, with an important future supported in research and that can answer to the needs of the productive fabric. It is to answer this that academic institutions as University of Aveiro and Entrepreneurial at the Center of Studies of Telco 30 years ago have created the institute. And today, you can continue to rely on it to answer to the challenges of the next 30 years. Thank you. Let's now give the floor to Pierre Luciana. He's the president of Porto Digital, Brazil. First, good morning. Let me greet the mayor. You know that Ribao in Brazil is prefeito, so he's the mayor. It's a different word in Portuguese from Portugal and Brazil. So it's a pleasure to participate here, knowing that we would have Tech Week, some part of the content, and the beginning of bringing Porto Digital to Aveiro. We've been here in April this year, when you spoke about an initial contact. You will have Aveiro in Pernambuco in November in our event. But this choice, choosing Aveiro, it follows a pattern which is quite uncommon. I said that things appear in Lisbon and then they go to the rest of the countries, and we are choosing Aveiro first. Maybe we can get to Lisbon someday, but we are here because we are used to do it. In a certain way, this is quite a city in Brazil that does have a set of problems to be solved, climate problems, because just like you, we have a city where rivers sometimes go into the city. So, but here in Aveiro, we saw the opportunity to have a technological ecosystem that we did in Recife. We are just finishing 22 years. For those who are not aware of it, Porto Digital is an area of Recife in the center, in the port area, where we can have an urban regeneration project that's ongoing but it's very, very far from being finished. But the quality of the urban planning here is much higher than ours, but we have a very significant set of companies that I will tell you about soon. Three main things that are very important, so that this has to do with being successful like we did in Recife. The territory is very important. Aveiro is very similar to Recife. Culture. This choosing of Aveiro could happen with a lot of clarity. You have urban quality, which is the one that we wish to reach. You have solved the problems in the rivers, the program of floods that you told me were common. These are things that we are very afraid of. I'm sure that you will want to know what has been done here because it's a very serious problem. A very, very severe flood in Recife. So the territory is very important. So we have this culture that really connects us. Then, when visiting the University of Aveiro, there is no question that the university is a very important partner for this to happen because it's a hub of innovation. We have 6 incubators, private accelerators, more than 350 companies, 7 institutes of science and technology, a lot of things there. You know, the main company of security in Brazil is the same for AI also, but we are known by the centers of research and development, and probably your smartphones have a technology. Apple, Samsung, Motorola, Nokia, where we put it all inside. So this issue of training is very important. Recife is the city with the greatest footprint. We have more than 600 in terms of footprint and the greatest per capita knowledge of students of technology. Just to tell you what we're able to get, we have more students studying computers than the entirety of Portugal, with a lot of traction, a lot of dedication, and a strategic project that was decided 20 years ago. Long-term projects, that's what we are used to do. And the third point, it's this business network bringing employees to live in Aveiro. In the soft learning process that we are learning, we are always learning, right? But Porto Digital is very proud to participate here. So we always want things to the long run. It's just like in Recife, 50, 60,000 people working with technology. It's that in 10 years, it's a long-term project, of course, but Aveiro must be recognized as the capital of technology in Portugal. The capacity of our companies looking for resources for Porto Digital, thinking that the same way that you spoke about things that appear in Lisbon, Recife was the same thing. Not a lot of people believed when innovation was not in the dictionary yet that we could have an innovation pact in a city in the periphery country also. And a word that was very important to me, a great artist that has already died from Recife, Chic Science, said, "We are always right, but we are always right in a wrong way." All the best. Now we will hear Fernando Alfaiate, President of the mission Recover Portugal, RRP. Good morning, all. Let me start by thanking first and foremost the mayor of Aveiro. José Ribal Esteves, for having us. This event clearly shows, from the point of view of technology associated with the cultural sector of creative industries and technology, greeting the city for this organization and by what it happens associated to co-organizers, sponsors and partners in the subject of technologies. I was able to see also with a great deal of pleasure, and we visited in the morning, and also to observe the environment connected with innovation and technology in this city that comes to the world with the ability to innovate and transformation, and the digital transformation also with a component connected with a concern, an environmental, a climate concern, associating it to a priority or a double priority that also in the EC and within the strategy that has been defined in terms of strategy of the Portugal 2020. I do apologize, Portugal 2030, associated to the European strategy also of applying priorities in financial devices for available funds. This double digital priority and climate priority is also present in the RRP when we see that the structure defined was conceived taking into account three structuring dimensions, between which one of which is connected to digital transformation, the other connected to climate transition and energy transition, and one other that has to do with resilience. This component of resilience dominating from the point of view of the financial tool in terms of the RRP. This financial device comes within a package that has been developed by the EC in an extraordinary manner because it didn't fit at that time in what was the European budget that had been defined up to 2027. And so there was an additional resource coming from what was the impact caused by the pandemic, connected with an impact on a social and economic view. This led member states of the EU to find additional resources. For the first time, the EC had to use funding from the market to create those resources, those additional resources that were not expected. So member states have developed an additional tool to what is the point of view of structural funds, which are the different RRPs in each one of the 27 member states. So therefore we had an overlap, or we still have an overlapping or an additional strengthening of investments in a stage where we are just closing PT 2020, and so the RRP, which is being implemented, and I would like to take advantage of this, and I will bring some point of situation in terms of showing where we stand from the point of view of the execution, and also PT 2030 is about to start with a certain degree of delay compared to what has been the beginning of PT 2020. So we have a delay of around 1 year. Amidst all of this, there is an unexpected circumstance that has to do with the war caused by, has been mentioned, an additional impact, bringing variables that we didn't think could be a concern, bringing or adding some problems that we could have identified that had to do with this overlapping that I was talking about, that will cause a pressure in terms of what is construction, and also what we have mentioned before in terms of our qualified labor. The program has been approved with these three dimensions, being that the climate dimension needs to represent at least 37% of the allocation, and the digital dimension needs to be 27%. This is actually mandatory. According to the EC, it has been approved in July 2021. So there is a set of agreements that had to be then concluded, and from henceforth the execution started. There are three dimensions divided in 20 components. The RRP is not a closed project per se, because it has a set of final beneficiaries in some of the measures that need to be selected and approved, and we will go through that in a moment. But there is a set of components, a set of investments that is previously defined and close to that programming. It's ongoing. There is a reformulation of the RRP that will take place until the end of the year for some of the things that are necessary for that adjustment. There is an additional effort of around 1,500 billion euros that have not been incorporated, but on the other hand, there is a program called Repower EU, which has to do with concerns that have to do with energy, that need to be included in the RRP and need to be observed in all legislation. It's not finished yet. I'm sure that it will happen until the end of the first trimester of 2023. So, this is the opportunity of making some adjustments, if allowed, and I'm sure that they will, from the point of view of what were the goals established to attain the goal that has been already used. So from the point of view of the deadline, it doesn't go beyond 26, so we need to work on this period. So we keep this intensity of making sure that this will happen because the country needs it, and being something that happens in terms of investments with the greatest urgency as possible in articulation with a package of PT 2030 that has not begun yet and that will have that possibility. It is very important to focus on this execution, and that is what the structure follows as a purpose, to have a continuous connection with the EU, being some of the goals that we need to comply with, the transfer funds to Portugal, so that we are able to plan, correct, adjust in order to reach to the point of execution 2026 with this investment fully brought to the economy which is the goal for which we are working. Coming back to the RRP in the dimension of resilience, we do have around 9 components, one in health, with concerns in terms of improving the national health system and digitizing it also. The other one has to do with housing, thus providing housing to low-income families and other associated measures to providing housing for people who need special conditions or favorable conditions, social answers connected to devices, to digitization, and bringing new social answers in terms of working with the local representatives and social solidarity institutions to attain target groups such as senior citizens, people with disabilities, kindergartens, retirement homes, and other social developments with innovation and with answers thought for that purpose. A specific component connected with culture in terms of research, not just in terms of heritage, but also digitization, something that was connected to the creative industry, technology, that has become more important. Also, the component C5 that has to do with companies, where we include mobilizing agendas that have been addressed before. C6, qualification and competences, an area that is connected with the fostering of postgraduate courses or STEAM skills, which is one of the strongest ones in terms of investment, infrastructures associated not just to creating areas of expertise that we have some in the district of Aveiro that has been approved, but also the roads and access to areas of industrial areas with companies, and also forestry and issues that have to do with bushfires, water also in the region of the Algarve and Alentejo, seen as regions that have the need, the pending and urgent need of measures of managing water resources. Within the climate transition, one specific remark for the area of the economy of the sea: decarbonization of the industry will be a measure that the RRP started, associated, and has launched a call to select projects dedicated to the industry and the decarbonization of the industry, thus launching a different one in the beginning of the next year, thus complementing a goal of reaching around 300 projects in this area that have an impact in terms of reducing or mitigating emissions. And this will be something that will have continuity and will then be connected with PT 2030. Because decarbonization of the industry will be a very important factor. sustainable bioeconomy, three consortia that are defining sectors as priorities. Energy efficiency, not just in residential buildings, but also in terms of services and some buildings of public administration. In terms of renewable energy, betting on what is hydrogen, sustainable mobility, a set of investments in terms of network and electrical vehicles. Digital transition. Within the digital transition, and this is where we have the five last components, one of which is connected to companies, training, the empowerment of people for digital transitions of workers, of managers, and another one that has to do, or three others that has to do with digitization of services of public administration and building a business environment that is more favorable in the point of view of services provided to companies within public services. And to finish, one last component of the digital school or devices of public schools with means that are empowering schools in order to go through a path in this field of the digital, of devices distributed not only to students but also to teachers, in devices that are available in classrooms that can be used in terms of a future connected to teaching via digital devices. One other thing from the point of view of execution and reporting expenditure to the EC, this program is centralized and it has a management focusing on the EC, so there is a coordinating entity in terms of each member state reporting the execution. So the entity following the execution of this measure is the structure of recovering. So says reporting to the EC means that every 6 months we have accountability and the sharing of accounts and what has been defined in terms of what is the plan that has been approved. 341 goals. So every 6 months we will report the execution, and this chart translates the distribution in the 20 components that are approved in the RRP and will be 10 reimbursement claims. So far we have done 2 September 30th we did the second ask for reimbursement from the EC. Let me also tell you that the execution of the RRP translates into the fulfillment of goals of what is something that we reported on this level, because the mechanism of execution is very different in terms of structural funds. So what we need to pay attention to is to the fulfillment of this planning defined by goals, by results, and that's what we are doing, in the sense that when the second ask we reach 17% of execution, translating this 58 of the 341 have been complied and reported. One other thing or advantage in terms of methodology of execution report has to do with the ability of the member state in having financial flow or a flow of the transfer into the member state that the execution of the investment where we are a bit more ahead from the point of view of treasury when compared by PT 2020 or 2030. This makes it easier with the resource that the entities and the projects that are approved. So we have around 31% of something that we get from the EU, from the member state, and this will be done until the end of the year because so far this ask has been presented in September. The EC will take 2 months, so at the end of the year we will have this goal. So we are at 20% of this value of this RRP that will be transferred to Portugal. If we have a methodology associated, we will have some problems in terms of this resource by allowing that this ask for pay would be fulfilled. Because here it has to do with signing an agreement between the mission structure and an entity, a public entity, which will be in charge of putting together a measure that is expected in the RRP. We have 68 entities that took on this part in terms of goals, in terms of defined funds. So all of this has been done up to the end of 2021. That's very easy to take on the idea that the public entities had said they would do. So this is an agreement. You put on this agreement that we will then execute. So from there on, as I said in the beginning, there are investments that have been identified that need to be selected and approved. We have 51% that has been approved. So we include the investments that have been identified and the ones that have been selected too. Just an example. We have 51 projects selected for negotiation and we have 32 projects that have been agreed upon. So I'm only counting on 32, okay? So they are still being negotiated, but we know what they are, and there is still an important step to take. In terms of decarbonization, we have 250 tenders. We spoke about this, that we needed 300 projects. So in these 250, some of them will be approved, and that will happen into this value of what has been approved then. So this is the indicator that we need to define that will be applied in terms of those investments. But that doesn't mean waiting for the invoice then to send to the EC, so for them to pay again. No, that's not how it works. That happens for PT 2020 and PT 2030. No, we don't need to wait for the invoice. What I need is for projects to be approved, that the measure, we have 300 projects approved, and with it I can already have some accountability and transfer the money. Then we need to have the idea that the money has been applied in those projects. So that is an obligation ex post, so that we can prove and now I could only prove 5% of what is the investment because the report that I've got so far translates said reality. From the point of view of execution, as I said, it's 17%. 17%. So, this is the report and the mechanism, and at the end of the day, all approved projects need to be validated and executed. Let's go very quickly, or some numbers associated to what are the projects approved so far. Of this 51% in the field of digital transition and in other areas, I will not go into greater detail in terms of schools, as we said. And we were also talking about the living science clubs at school, that I know that there is also a project here associated to all of this, creating an additional support of this measure. So these initiatives, they become clear that I always get the idea that it's always a participation in community funds that's quite steep, that takes advantage of them, that meets the tools that are available, but there is still its capacity of fulfilling the projects, and if there are no resources, the work is the same, and with structural funds they can go beyond. This behavior becomes clear, and in terms of the funds, this has been present in all of this. So we have the issue of innovation in this field of agriculture, similarly to what has to do with our investment in terms of mobilizing agendas that have to do with investments, transferring technology, consortia that take on universities, tech centers, companies, and also companies that are more competitive, sectors with added value, so that you can get more exports with better income and well-being for Portuguese people. In terms of society of knowledge and innovation, well, the project that's more representative will be the training, where we have a very significant number of tenders. But let me just share with you some figures. In terms of housing, for example, the goal was to get housing for families in need. In terms of health, it's not just digitization, but also the renewal of health centers, of all of them, and we have about 251, but it will be 360 if I'm not mistaken as a whole, in order to be equipped also with devices associated to electric vehicles. And so these are very specific and defined with projects that are identified in the RRP. Mobility in transports, an investment, for example, in terms of electric line transport, subways, and some infrastructures also, infrastructures of connection, and connections to companies and the environment and territory that I would like to highlight in terms of the forests and the equipment in fighting fires and the maintenance of areas on the ground. Well, this was done in a rush, but I thought it was important to bring it because it translates what Aveiro means in terms of RRP. Well, we have around 10,000 tenders approved. It's about 6,000. So 582 million of approved investment and a payment of around 12 million distributed by typology of beneficiaries, cities, companies, institutions of the scientific and tech system, and also entities and companies, schools, families. So families that are connected to energy efficiency and the support given to energy efficiency in terms of housing. And another table here that shows us the investment and the components that are associated. Things that are being published in terms of tenders, in terms of news, newsletters. I would like to share with you the recommendation of going to our website and search tenders that are open. Also public tenders for companies that obviously have the intention of bringing this kind of presentation of proposals, and the website always depends on the capacity of having the public entities in charge of investments with our coordination, where we try to make sure that all elements have this path defined, because this is the way it should be done. Let me thank you for your attention, and I would love to wish you all the greatest success for this Tech Week in Aveiro. All the best to all of you. Thank you. So we hereby close the opening session of the Aveiro Tech Week. Thank you all for coming. Right at the exit, you will have some coffee and some beverages. Thank you. Hope you have enjoyed.